and the omnibus. So I was forced into the Archers when I was a child. And look, it's come back to bite me later on. I'm awash with this stuff.
The Archers is the world's longest-running radio show, with more than 15,000 episodes broadcast. Despite being a rural flavor show, The Archers is recorded in the heart of...
Welcome to The Debate. Today, we are dissecting a fascinating collision between two fundamental ways of managing chaos: the soft power of psychological ritual versus the hard reality of, well, structural execution. We're looking at a week in Ambridge that forces us to ask a pretty profound question. Can a carefully curated interpersonal ritual really repair deep systemic fractures? Or do hard metrics, precise definitions, and the laws of physics ultimately dictate whether you succeed or fail?
It's the age-old battle, isn't it? I'd almost call it the struggle between vibes and vectors. On one side, you have Akram at Bridge Farm attempting to engineer a delicate social repair through what he calls a meal to heal. And on the other, you have Justin Elliott standing in a muddy field facing the catastrophic physical reality of an art installation that simply does not measure up.
Vibes and vectors is a catchy way to put it, yeah. But I think the stakes are much higher than that implies. So, I am taking the position that ritual and connection are paramount. Akram's introduction of the meal to heal, it isn't just about sharing a dessert. It provides a sophisticated psychological framework. I believe this framework is robust enough to override external threats, specifically the toxic brother Susan is so worried about. And it serves to smooth over that deep-seated workplace friction.
Absolute failure with the Sunrise artwork demonstrates that without precise definitions, clear contracts, and structural awareness, all the good intentions and exquisite details are, well, they're worthless. You can't charm your way out of a dimension error, and you certainly cannot build a visitor center on vague artistic sentiment. If the math doesn't work, the whole mission fails.
Okay, challenge accepted. Let's begin by unpacking the situation at Bridge Farm Dairy. To understand the value of the ritual Akram is proposing, we have to first understand the depth of the crisis Susan is facing. This isn't just standard workplace stress. Susan is in a state of high distress. She's facing a multifaceted threat. Her grandson, George, his fiancé, and the looming influence of a toxic brother who used fear to unsettle them.
It's a messy situation. Susan explicitly states, "I saw how easily George's head could be turned." That is a chilling realization for our grandmother.
Exactly. It's terrifying for her. This is a woman who feels her familial authority, her whole identity really, slipping away. She feels helpless. And into that power vacuum steps Akram. Now, remember, Akram is already in a pretty precarious position. He's stepping into Adam's old role. The friction is palpable. But look at how he manages this. He doesn't offer a business strategy. He proposes the meal to heal.
Which, to the cynical ear, sounds a bit like corporate HR speak, doesn't it?
It might sound like that on the surface, but look at the mechanics of it. He articulates a strategic alignment. He talks about tastes, textures, and common rituals, like the simple act of passing plates. He argues that by emphasizing these shared sensory experiences, Susan can reestablish the bond she feels she lost. He's telling her, you can't fight fear with logic, you have to fight it with connection. My argument is that this high-level emotional intelligence is the only thing that can solve the friction at the farm. Technical training on the pasteurizer is, well, it's secondary to this emotional alignment. If Susan doesn't feel safe and connected, the whole dairy falls apart.
That is a compelling narrative for the dairy, I'll give you that. It's warm, it's fuzzy, but let's look at the cold, hard ground at the rewilding site. While Akram is theorizing about textures and tastes, Justin, Kirsty, and Rex are waiting in the freezing cold for a lorry.
The anticipation was certainly high.
High? It was stratospheric. I mean, note the expectation here. They want a structure to dominate the entrance. They want to inspire visitors. They're looking for a monument. They've invited the Echo newspaper. The press releases are ready to go. This is a capital P project.
A landmark to define the site.
Correct. And what arrives? Not a flatbed lorry with a crane. A delivery van.
a transit van. And inside is not a monument, but a 5-foot slice of oak called Sunrise. Now, I grant you, Justin calls it exquisite with the stained glass. But let's be real, it is practically invisible in the context of an outdoor visitor center.
It's intimate.
It's small. My position is that Justin's reliance on artistic vision and his vague communication-changing designs once or twice on the rest led to a catastrophic waste of the budget. No amount of reframing makes that art bigger. And just as a nice meal might not be enough to counter the structural damage done to George's mindset, a small piece of oak cannot anchor a massive rewilding project. You can't vibe a 5-foot sculpture into a 20-foot tower.
I see the discrepancy, and yes, the visual comedy of the van versus the lorry it's undeniable. But I want to challenge your dismissal of subjective management. You say you can't vibe things into existence, but let's look at the dishwasher incident at the dairy. This is a perfect microcosm of this debate.
Ah, the jugs.
The jugs. Susan criticizes them for being higgledy-piggledy. To her, that visual irregularity represents chaos. She sees big jugs next to small jugs and thinks the entire system is broken.
Well, in a streamlined production line, visual chaos usually implies procedural chaos. I mean, if I walk into a factory and tools are scattered everywhere, I assume the output is compromised.
But that's the key insight. Akram explains they were arranged by order of use, not size. He's operating on a functional procedural logic, the flow of the work, the vector, if you will. Susan is operating on a visual logic. Now here is the brilliance, and this is why the ritualist wins. Akram apologizes.
He apologizes for being right?
He apologizes for disrupting her sense of order. He wasn't wrong about the workflow, but he realized that to Susan, visual order equals safety. He prioritizes the human connection over the logical arrangement. That intellectual flexibility allows for cooperation. He bends the reality of the jugs to fit Susan's psychological need. That is power.
I am sorry, but I just don't buy that as a defense for what happens with the artwork. You're praising Akram for bending reality, but in the physical world, you cannot bend the result. Subjective beauty, like the stained glass sun shining through the oak, is completely irrelevant if the objective function fails. And the objective function of the artwork was to make an impact for the Echo newspaper and, crucially, for Peggy's family.
But impact is subjective.
Not when you are trying to take a press photo. Justin calls it a potential laughingstock, because the scale is all wrong. You cannot negotiate dimensions after the delivery van arrives. In the dairy, you can rearrange jugs to soothe an ego. In the rewilding site, you cannot stretch the wood. Rex suspected the plans were wrong. He explicitly said the dimensions don't make sense, and he was ignored. That isn't a failure of relationship. It's a failure of basic geometry. Justin failed because he refused to look at the numbers.
But is it a total failure?
Introducing the Archer's Mug, where elegance meets everyday comfort. Crafted from premium white ceramic, designed with vibrant peekaboo colors inside, simple, modern, and stylish. Start your day the Archer's way, with warmth, familiarity, and the comfort of voices you've come to love. As the stories unfold on the Archers, let this mug become part of your daily ritual, a small reminder of life in Ambridge. Practical for every home, dishwasher and microwave safe. Available in 2 sizes, 11 ounces and 15 ounces, designed to fit your lifestyle. Enjoy your favorite drink in a mug that connects you to Britain's most beloved countryside story, The Archers. For more information and to order your very own The Archers mug, follow the link below and make it part of your daily routine.
You are quick to dismiss the Sunrise piece as a disaster, but listen to the reaction when they actually look at it. Set in your own oak, they say. How inventive. There is an intrinsic value there that Justin eventually sees. He stops panicking for a moment and just admires the winter sun coming through the glass.
He sees it for about 3 seconds before he immediately asks, "Where is the rest of it?" That is the key reaction. It's the gap between expectation and reality. And this leads me to question the efficacy of Akram's meal to heal. You are presenting it as this master key to human psychology. But let's look at the data.
Susan admits George's head was easily turned by fear. Do we really believe that a shared dessert, like the Pakistani mathai Akram introduces, is enough to counter deep psychological manipulation?
You are reducing it to the food again. It is not just the dessert. It is the framework. We need to define what Akram is actually doing. He says, the first thing is to focus on what you are going to eat, choosing dishes that please the tastes of both parties. This is validation.
It sounds like lunch planning.
It is strategic validation. When you validate someone's taste, you validate them as a person. You are saying, I see what you like and I honor it. He explicitly mentions keeping the conversation warm and honest. This serves to reestablish the bond. If that bond is strong, Susan's influence prevails. It is a battle for influence, and Akram is arming Susan with soft weapons. He's giving her the tools to reclaim her grandson, not through force, but through attraction.
Or is Akram just utilizing common sense dressed up as a proprietary solution? I mean, Susan even says it's common sense in a way. I would argue the real problem at the farm isn't a lack of shared rituals, it's the rigid hierarchy. Susan emphasizes Helen then me to establish dominance. She is territorial. She barks at him about the beard covers.
The beard covers are a safety requirement.
But the dynamic is subservience. Akram's success isn't the meal to heal, it's his submission. He wears the itchy beard cover without complaint. He asks to take notes. He plays the subordinate to soothe her ego. That isn't a healing ritual, that is a corporate survival strategy. He is managing up.
I really disagree with the cynicism of that interpretation. It's humility, not submission. There is a distinction. Akram acknowledges his limitations. He knows more about goats than cows. He asks for the pen. And notice the result. Susan goes from being defensive about higgledy-piggledy jugs to sharing deep personal anxieties. That transition only happens because Akram created a psychologically safe container for it. He turned a training session into a therapy session. That is the definition of impact.
Well, while Akram is conducting therapy, Justin is conducting a master class in how to incinerate a budget. And this brings us to sunk costs. Justin asks, did you spend Peggy's entire artwork budget on just this piece? And the answer is likely yes. He is now trapped. He has spent the budget on a single small piece due to missed things to miscommunication.
But notice why the budget was blown. He admitted he changed the design once or twice, and the rest. It was an iterative process. Art is not like manufacturing widgets.
It was indecision. And now he is desperately trying to mount it on a platform or find a fix in 3 days. This is what happens when you don't check the plans against reality. Rex explicitly said Rex thinks the plans are wrong. Justin ignored the technical expert because he was romanced by the artistic vision. He fell in love with the idea of the art and forgot to check the specs. He is now facing what he fears most, not just public humiliation, but Lillian.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. Justin's panic is real, yes. The fear of Lillian is, well, it's rational. But look at how he handles the arrival. He helps lift it. He physically engages with the problem. Even in the face of failure, he is capable of finding beauty. Just as Susan and Akram found common ground over the mathai, Justin might find a way to reframe the art. If he abandons his rigid expectation of dominating the entrance, he might see that an intimate, exquisite piece actually fits the rewilding theme better. Rewilding isn't about domination, it's about nuance.
That is a lovely sentiment, really, but try telling that to the Echo newspaper, try telling that to a reporter who showed up for a headline and got a footnote, and certainly try telling that to Lillian. Justin explicitly says a bad reaction from Lillian is a lot scarier than any public humiliation. He knows that in the real world, the world of stakeholders and press releases, reframing is often just a synonym for excuse-making. You cannot reframe a 5-foot object to look like a 15-foot object. He is in a sunk cost fallacy, hoping that if he just stares at it long enough, the value will manifest.
But isn't that exactly what Susan is trying to do with George? She is trying to take a relationship that has shrunk, that has been diminished by the toxic brother, and grow it back to its original size through the meal to heal. She is banking on the sunk cost of their family history.
The difference is, a relationship is elastic. Oak is not. You can stretch a heart, you cannot stretch timber.
That is a fair distinction. However, both situations reveal that the plans, whether they're architectural drawings or family expectations, rarely survive contact with reality. The question is, how do you adapt? Akram adapts by observing, listening, and offering a new framework. Justin adapts, well, currently he's panicking, but the potential is there.
Justin's adaptation is frantic. He suggests a platform, a print. He's grasping at straws. This highlights the danger of assumed understanding. Justin says, "It seems we had a different understanding regarding the dimensions." He assumed the artist knew what dominate the entrance meant. She interpreted it differently. Dominant to an artist might mean draw the eye with intense color, not block out the sun with mass.
And Susan assumed she knew how to fix George until Akram gave her a specific methodology. The meal to heal bridges that gap of assumed understanding. It forces the participants to actually look at what the other person needs, their preferred textures, their tastes. It removes the assumption and replaces it with data, albeit sensory data.
I'll concede that Akram's method collects data on the person. That is true. But does it solve the external threat? The toxic brother is an external variable, much like the budget or the artist exhibition schedule. You can have the most beautiful internal data, the perfect meal, the perfect conversation, but if the external force is strong enough, it crashes the party. Susan hates the brother. She says he tried to frighten us. That is a brute force attack. I remain skeptical that a warm and honest conversation is a sufficient shield against that.
But brute force is brittle. Influence, true, deep influence, built on shared ritual, is resilient. Susan says, if we still had that bond, your influence would prevail. She understands the battle is for George's trust. The toxic brother uses fear. Susan must use connection. That is the only winning move. If she tries to outfear the brother, she loses. She has to change the game. And Akram shows her that the dinner table is the battlefield she can win on.
And meanwhile, Justin is playing a game he's already lost. He invited the echo, they haven't responded. He wrote a press release they didn't print. He is shouting into the void. This reinforces my point about metrics. If you do not have the image of the artwork to send, if you do not have the dimensions to verify, you have nothing to sell. All the well-written press releases in the world, Justin's version of the meal to heal, if you will, cannot overcome the lack of product. He is marketing a ghost.
Yet, notice who is there to help him. David shows up. Kirsty is there. They help him lift it. There is a community around him, just as there is a community forming around Susan. Even when the product fails, the process of dealing with it can strengthen the team. Justin, Kirsty, and Rex are bonded in this crisis. God help me, Justin says about Lillian. They are united in fear, perhaps, but they are united. Sometimes a shared disaster is the best team-building exercise there is.
It is united in fear of Lillian is a powerful motivator. I'll grant you that. But let's circle back to the dishwasher incident one last time. You called it a negotiation. I call it a warning sign. Susan was ready to be offended because the jugs were moved. She is highly sensitive to her territory. Akram navigated it this time, but that level of walking on eggshells, is that sustainable? He has to wear the beard cover. He has to apologize for being productive. How long before he gets tired of soothing the matriarch?
It is sustainable if there is mutual respect, and I think we see the seeds of that. Susan eventually says, I really do think they learned something. She validates him. She thanks him. That is the currency of the workplace. It's not just about efficiency. It's about feeling valued. Akram makes Susan feel like the expert, Helen than me, while simultaneously teaching her a brand new concept. That is mastery. He isn't walking on eggshells. He is dancing.
It is manipulation. Skillful, benevolent manipulation, but manipulation nonetheless. And Justin, he was manipulated by his own vague desires. He wanted to be a patron of the arts, and he ended up with a garden ornament.
I think garden ornament is harsh. It is a stained glass sunrise. It captures the light.
It's 5 feet tall in a rewilding center for a grand opening. It is a garden ornament. If I order the Statue of Liberty and get a bobblehead, I am not comforted by the fact that it captures the light.
Okay. Let's bring this to a point of synthesis. We are looking at 2 attempts to impose will upon the world. Akram uses the meal to heal to impose order on a chaotic family dynamic. Justin uses the Sunrise Commission to impose order on the landscape.
He can shape them. He can reframe them. Justin fails because his materials, oak and budget, are finite. You cannot influence a bank account to have more money once it is spent. You cannot persuade a 5-foot log to be a 20-foot tower. The material world has hard edges.
I see that distinction, but I would argue that Akram succeeds not because the materials are malleable, but because he respects the dimensions of the people involved. He measures Susan's anxiety. He fits the meal to those dimensions. Justin failed because he didn't measure. He didn't respect the constraints. He tried to force a vision without checking the reality.
Precisely. He didn't measure. He waited for a lorry when he should have expected a van. He ignored the plans. If he had treated the art with the same meticulous care Akram treats the dairy roster, he wouldn't be in this mess.
So perhaps we agree on this. Whether you are dealing with a toxic brother or a piece of oak, you must understand the true scale of what you are facing. You cannot fix what you do not measure, be it emotional depth or physical height.
Indeed. Ignorance of the dimensions, psychological or physical, is the root of the crisis.
To summarize my position then, the meal to heal represents the best of human endeavor. It is the use of shared ritual to repair broken bounds. Akram proves that soft skills are actually the hard solution to systemic trauma. The sunrise artwork, while small, is beautiful because of its detail, and perhaps Justin can learn to value intimacy over domination.
And to summarize my position, ignoring dimensions leads to disaster. Justin's scramble to avoid public humiliation is a stark warning against valuing sentiment over specifications. A meal to heal is a nice idea, but it relies on the willingness of the other party to eat. Structural reality, like the size of that oak, does not care about your feelings. If you order a monument and get a slice, you have failed.
Both scenarios, however, reveal the danger of assumed understanding. Justin assumed the size, Susan assumed she knew how to fix George.
And both required a third party, Akram or the arrival of the van, to shatter those assumptions and reveal the reality.
So we leave it to you, the listener. When facing a crisis, do you need a meal to heal to fix the relationship, or do you simply need a lorry to deliver the goods?
And can you ever really talk your way out of a problem that you failed to measure?
Thank you for joining the debate.
So what are you doing now?
Just getting ready for the next episode. Just moving mics around.
So what do you do?
I do the spot effects on the arches. Any
Are you what we call Foley then?
Kind of. Yep.
Okay. And these are all part of the paraphernalia of production.
Yep. That's the ball bar. That's
this one.
Yep. That's.
Haley so wanted to be in their own place when their baby came. It's due in 2 months. Not much chance of that now. No. I mean, it would have been a stretch for them financially, mind, but I just wish there was something practical I could do to help them, Caroline. I think The Archers has had this immense popularity over the years, basically because it has always very accurately reflected the reality of life and living in a rural community at whatever